Once a month, my partner Jay and I turn our Chicagoland apartment into a cozy cafe for our friends, and this is everything that goes into it. Unlike many of the other home cafes I've seen on TikTok, everything at ours is scratch-made. The savory, the sweet, the beverages, everything is handmade. My baking begins on Saturday morning, where, after a quick coffee fuel up, I dive straight into prepping the chocolate chip and espresso cookie dough so it can chill in the fridge. Then it's on to prepping the biscuits for the breakfast sandwiches. Another coffee break, and I'm diving head first into coffee cake time. By the time the cake is out of the oven and cooling, Justin is home from work and he dives into his savory prep. I am up at 5:30 a.m. the following morning to prep and shape the cinnamon rolls. I throw the cookies into the oven to bake up. Once baked, it's onto the cinnamon rolls. More coffee and Justin starts diving into his savory prep while I begin to rearrange our apartment, setting up the sign and our adorable little merch for guests to peruse and buy. Throw the biscuits into the oven and make the final table settings before placing out all the baked goods. Guests arrive and it's a whirlwind until folks leave around 3 hours later. The kitchen is a wreck and we're exhausted, but it's honestly all worth it.
Hosting my final pop-up coffee bar out of my dorm for the school year. This actually happened last month, and it was by far the most complicated menu I crafted because there were a couple of Asian-inspired drinks to celebrate AAPI month. Some of them included a strawberry cream rose cold brew, banana milk V coffee, and a hojicha latte. The prep and taste test for this took about a week, and I didn't even get the ratio down for the strawberry rose cream until the day before hosting. That was my initial reaction after putting 2 tablespoons of rose extract for a cup when it only really needed 2 drops. I was honestly prepared to make a lot of matcha lattes with Rocky's Matcha because that drink is usually the most popular, but once people saw the first person walk out with a strawberry rose cold brew, a lot of people requested it and I even had to make 2 more batches of the cold foam cream. It's crazy to think I went from making a single themed drink when I first started hosting these out of my dorm to crafting a menu with multiple specialty drinks within such a short span of time. I wish I had the time to dabble into espresso-based drinks, but I have since graduated and will be moving my operations uptown into a little apartment, which I'm super excited for, but I know I will miss caffeinating an entire building full of college students. Who knows, maybe the next step after becoming a nurse is opening my own cafe, but for now, I'm just happy to be done with nursing school.
Everyone thinks this is just a cute TikTok trend. Gen Z making their own lattes at home, filming it with soft lighting and lofty beats, calling it a home cafe. It looks harmless, wholesome even. But under the foam art and filtered camera angles, something deeper is brewing. What began as a social media aesthetic has quietly transformed into a growing, decentralized movement, one that should make every bureaucrat, corporate lobbyist, and health inspector very, very nervous. Across the country, young people are converting their kitchens, dorm rooms, and living rooms into fully operational cafes. We're talking Canva-designed drink menus, made from scratch pastries, branded cups, espresso martinis served under Edison bulbs. Some take donations, some trade services, some just host entire friend groups in what is, legally speaking, an unlicensed restaurant. They're not getting permits, they're not complying with zoning laws, they're not filing all LLCs or checking boxes for city food code enforcement. What they're doing is creating something more dangerous than Starbucks ever could. They're building a black market, and they're doing it with croissants and chai. In an economy designed to crush informal human connection under the weight of licensing fees and tax codes, Gen Z is opting out, not by protest, not by politics, but by quietly reviving the most dangerous idea of all, self-reliance. And as anyone paying attention to the legal system knows, that's not allowed. Because in this country, selling your neighbor a muffin can be a criminal offense. No, that's not a joke. In many states, if you don't operate out of a licensed commercial kitchen and jump through regulatory hoops meant for franchises and fast food giants, you can be fined, or worse. Kids have had lemonade stands shut down by police. A woman in California was threatened with jail time for selling ceviche on Facebook. Another was served a cease and desist order mid-dinner for organizing a lasagna night with friends. The message is crystal clear: no license, no latte. The only people allowed to feed each other are the ones who pay the state for the privilege and don't even think about giving food away for free. That's illegal too. In cities like Houston, volunteers handing out meals to the homeless have been hit with fines totaling over $80,000. You can panhandle without a permit, but if you share a sandwich with someone who's hungry, you're treated like you're running an unlicensed fentanyl lab. Welcome to America. This might all sound absurd until you realize we've seen this movie before. The last time the government tried to strangle simple pleasures with a chokehold of control, the result was prohibition. Americans didn't stop drinking, they just went underground. Speakeasies flourished. Jazz and gin flowed through hidden doors in barbershops and basements. In New York alone, there were an estimated 20,000 illegal bars operating during the Noble experiment. Now it's happening again. But instead of bathtub gin, it's cold brew in mason jars. Instead of flappers and fedoras, it's TikTokers in pastel aprons. The rebellion is just as real and just as subversive. And why wouldn't it be? The financial reality Gen Z faces is a dystopian joke. They're entering adult life buried in debt, with rent devouring half their paycheck and wages that haven't kept up with inflation since the iPod. They're maxing out credit cards by age 25 and seeing negative wealth before they even start their first job. The so-called American dream is a punchline. And they're tired of waiting for the system to fix itself. So they did what generations always do under pressure. They improvised. They turned side hustles into supper clubs. They turned bedrooms into bakeries. They started brewing espresso not because it's quirky, but because it's cheaper than handing over $7 a day to a faceless chain that pays baristas less than the cost of a muffin. And they broadcast it proudly. TikTok is flooded with videos of home cafe setups, menus taped to the fridge, friends lined up on the couch like they're waiting at a pop-up shop, baristas in thrifted aprons pouring lattes with latte art hearts while captions read, "Don't tell the feds." It's funny. Until you realize they're not joking. This isn't theory. This isn't metaphor. This is an actual replicating decentralized movement happening right now. Gen Z isn't imagining cafes in their kitchens. They're running them quietly, illegally, and often brilliantly. Videos under hashtags like home cafe, apartment cafe, and pop-up brunch have millions of views, not just vibe content. Fully executed cafe events hosted in apartments, dorm lounges, and backyards. Latte menus, branded cups, even handmade punch cards. Real creators are doing this by name. Users like Lasign, Nate Bake This, and Calvin Tanny are posting video tours of their pop-up cafes. These aren't single shots of latte foam. They're full-scale hospitality setups with guests, ambiance, and often monetary exchange in the form of tips, suggested donations, or just straight-up drink pricing. They're not hiding it. They're mocking the system. Post openly joke, "Don't tell the feds," with users knowingly flaunting their status as illegal businesses. These videos rack up likes because they're transgressive, not despite it. People are seeing these pop-ups and doing it themselves, from themed birthday cafes to cozy Sunday espresso clubs. Home cafes are becoming cultural currency, especially for Gen Z creators, priced out of commercial real estate or crushed by traditional startup costs. Why rent a space when your kitchen can hold 20 and your iPhone can reach thousands? And the state has cracked down on similar models before. California has raided dinner clubs and hit Facebook ceviche sellers with misdemeanor charges. Houston has cited people for feeding the homeless. Santa Barbara is literally running a task force against street tacos. These pop-up cafes, they're next on the list. These aren't just aesthetic moments, they're functioning underground economies. Some hosts are just doing it for fun. Others are taking cash or trades. Some are charging by the drink. But whether they're monetized or not, what they all share is this: they're operating completely outside the state's control. And that's where things get spicy. Because the state and the corporations it serves cannot allow informal economies to thrive. They're untracked, untaxed, unlicensed, uncontrolled. That's why cities like Santa Barbara are forming illegal kitchen task forces to hunt down home cooks. That's why Airbnb was gutted in New York, with short-term listings dropping over 80% after a bureaucratic blitz. That's why Arizona vetoed a bill to legalize homemade tamale sales, even with bipartisan support, citing rodent risk and chemical hazards as if abuela's cooking is a public health crisis. It's the same strategy every time. Cite safety, crush the competition, preserve the monopoly. What the government doesn't control, it tries to kill. But this time, it's not working. Because what's happening here is bigger than coffee. It's counter-economics in action. A real-world application of agorism, whether these kids know the term or not. Agorism is the idea that the best way to resist state power isn't through protest or legislation, it's through voluntary, unregulated exchange, trading goods and services outside the state's grip, every unlicensed brunch club, every homemade cupcake sale, every off-the-books espresso shot is an act of peaceful rebellion. It says, I don't need your permission to feed my community. And corporations, they hate this more than anyone. Chains and industry lobbyists cry foul whenever unregulated competition shows up. Restaurant associations work behind the scenes to shut down food freedom bills. Grocers complain that it's unfair. They have to follow rules that cottage cooks don't. Fast food lobbyists wring their hands about health standards when what they really fear is you spending $5 on a delicious sandwich from your neighbor instead of $14 on a shrink-wrapped combo from their nearest drive-thru. Big business doesn't want a free market. It wants a fenced-in market it already owns. That's why they back the very regulations they publicly pretend to oppose, because those regulations crush the little guy before he can get a foot in the door. The system isn't broken, it's rigged. But here's the twist. This rebellion doesn't look like a rebellion. It looks like brunch. That's what makes it dangerous. It's soft, it's warm, it's friendly. It doesn't wave flags or throw bricks. It just quietly says, we'll do this ourselves, without you. And every time someone hosts a pop-up cafe in their apartment, they're proving the system is unnecessary. That community can be built without permits. That quality can exist without inspections. That people can feed each other without state approval. This is how centralized control erodes, not through war, but through withdrawal, through muffins, through mocktails, through micro cafes that forget to file taxes. This is the Espresso Rebellion. And the state, bless its bloated, overreaching heart, should be terrified. This isn't a call to action. Don't listen to my finish here. I'm just joking. Hypothetically, allegedly, probably, could be, but maybe start your own. I love this trend with a passion. We might not agree on religion or politics, but if invited, I would come through. We could bond over how funny it is to bypass the state and laugh about the times when we both thought it was necessary. This is the opposite of the pandemic hysteria. I tip my hat to you, Gen Z. I would never tell you what to do. If you want to run an illegal cafe for your friends, host a pop-up brunch in your garage, swap pastries with neighbors, forget the rules. Because the moment you realize they were never about safety, only about control, is the moment you stop asking for permission. And when enough people do that, the system starves, one cinnamon latte at a time.